Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshini Namostute Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Pulla Ravindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvanito Jnanamaya Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraika Panaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Vridatuhe Namaha Yam Brahma Varunendra Rudra Marutaha Stunvanti Divyaistavaihi Vedai Sangapada Panishadaihi Kayanti Yam Samagaha Dhyanavastita Datkatena Manasa Pashyanti Yam Yoginaha Yasyantam na vidhusura suraganaha Devaya tasmai namaha Devaya tasmai namaha Sarvadharman parityajya Mamekam sharanam vraja Aham tva sarva papebhyah Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. So we are on the 8th lecture today of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. And this basically, as it says, Jnana Vijnana Yogaha. Jnana Vijnana Yogaha, indicating that, we may gain any amount of knowledge, it could be technical knowledge, it could be even spiritual knowledge. But if I don't put that into practice, to understand exactly what that knowledge wants me to grow into, to evolve into, then it is just knowledge by itself. So that is why this chapter is very beautiful. It's the start of the next set of the 3 sections of Bhagavad Gita. As we said, the 18 chapters of Bhagavad Gita has been classified into 3 books. The first 6 chapters was all about me, me, who am I, who I think I am. But by the end of the 6th chapter, in order to, as Gita pointed out, today's world, we all have so many problems, which we get so attached to, and the problems where it affects us. So in the 6 chapters, starting with where Arjuna was, a very conflicted individual, to the end of the 6th chapter, we recognize that all that Arjuna thought who he was, and because who he thought he was, all the problems which that thoughted Arjuna was, he comes to recognize that that is not who he is, right? So that was what the first 6 chapters was. But then we went on. So then we saw all the lot of discipline which Arjuna was taught by Krishna in such a way that he could, in all his thoughts where it was leading to his actions, that karma yoga part of it was brought out. And that is the discipline which allows him more and more to recognize his individual self and not that thoughted Arjuna part of it, right? So we saw all that in the first 6 chapters. And from here on, as again, I just want to take Gita's example, we saw that this weaknesses and the strengths of this human personality, we see it in Arjuna. And through Arjuna's personality, we actually also understand how we can deal with conflicts and everything. Now, we also recognize that these conflicts that we face, they come from the outer world, which is our interaction with the outer world. So it is very important for us to understand what is in this outer world. So we really need to know that the total activity of this cosmos, and how can I interact now with this cosmos in such a way that my relationship is very harmonious. And for this is what the second set of the lectures come out to be. So that's the introduction to these chapters here. And as I said, from the 7th chapter onwards, we will be brought into contact with this big cosmos. What is this cosmos? So far, I have learned who I am and who I'm not from the first 6 chapters. But now I will also learn more about what this cosmos really is. So far, I have looked at the whole cosmos as, all the way starting from my closeness, which is all these trees, the people, the animals, the beings, and all that, all the way up to the galaxies and everything. I think that is what the cosmos is. But in Bhagavad Gita, again, it shatters that notion by really what that cosmos is and my relationship with that cosmos. So I just put this whole thing as, if this whole thing is what is a cosmos, then I'm the small individual here, which is trying to connect to this whole cosmos itself. So this part of it is where we really understand that ultimately this whole cosmos is actually nothing but a representation of that ultimate God that we call, who is God? That God is nothing but this entire universe. And this part of it, from 7th chapter on, it becomes really clear. So you will also see that in the 7th chapter, this person who Arjuna thought was his friend, and also as a guide, as a coach, now you see that Krishna actually, role actually evolves in Arjuna's mind. That is so. Actually, Krishna never changed himself or anything, but he really changes from, who he was, which was an instructor, as a mentor, as a really good guide. So he changes from all that into a kind of, I would say, an avatar, a representative of that ultimate God. So he's no longer the simple friend of Arjuna or a philosopher. He starts to now say, okay, Arjuna, now you come to me, you depend on me, you surrender yourself to me. All these things he will start to say from this chapter. And you see this all the way from the very first shloka itself, which is Maya Asakta Mana Partha, Maya Asakta Mana Partha Yogam Yunjanmadashrayaham Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatha Jnasisi Tatshunu. So with that, we see that Krishna prepares the student. Or he knows that the student who he has is an A+ student, because so far, whatever Krishna has said, he has actually grasped it very well. And Arjuna also has that most important quality of a student, which is the complete faith in the teacher, which is very, very critical, because if I don't have faith and if I'm always doubting something, that itself acts as an obstacle. And that obstacle can prevent myself to understand the knowledge. And so here, Krishna is very happy with Arjuna, because he has shown the discipleship that Arjuna is. And he's now, very happy that Krishna is taking it forward. So we see that in the first chapter, in this chapter, the very first shloka itself, now it is not about Arjuna asking a question, but it is actually Krishna preempting. Oh, did you get some message now? No, right? For something, suddenly I got a message saying you're signed out of this device. I don't know, but you're able to hear and everything. Okay. So we see that in the seventh chapter, the first shloka is about now Krishna addressing Arjuna. Whereas you see in the previous ones, Arjuna would have a question. It was in the third and the fifth and everything. But here you see that Krishna himself starts with, saying that listen to what I'm saying, because again, we have said this before, listening is probably the most important skill. I cannot emphasize this any, much more, because even among the three most sadhanas, so, when we think about for our own evolution, we do so many different sadhanas. We go to the temple, we do japa, we do chanting, we do bhajans, we do so many different so many of these sadhanas. And then all this prepares my mind and makes my mind to a state of purity where now I can actually sit down and listen. I can sit down and read about Bhagavad Gita, I can listen. But here too, in Jnana Yoga, so we're coming to the state of Jnana Yoga, where it is all about knowledge, about understanding, because as much as I'm doing all the sadhanas of going to the temple and everything, but if I don't have the knowledge or this, why do I want to go to the temple? Why am I doing this japa? Why am I doing the bhajans? If I don't have that clarity, then all my sadhanas, even though it does help me to some extent, but the greatest bang for the buck is when I'm starting to do my understanding of the knowledge. So for this, three of the sadhanas, which is always said as the Jnana Yoga sadhanas, which is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. Right? So Shravanam is, I have to listen. Only when I listen and I really understand, can I even reflect upon something. So the reflection is the Mananam part of it. And from the Mananam, I will actually, now that I have understood, I can actually just abide in myself. So it is literally conversion of that Jnana part of it, knowledge, to Vijnana in Nididhyasanam, where I now have understood this. Just like, for example, let's take electricity, now I know I have, when I say I know, in high school or even middle school, I would have learned about electricity. Okay. Now, but how do I experience electricity? I can indirectly experience electricity through this bulb and through this computer and all that. But I can actually experience electricity, as Swami Chinmayananda would say, through electric yoga, which is I come in contact with electricity and I get a shock, and then I realize that is electricity, right? So at that point in time, that knowledge has now been converted into actual application in my mind, right? So too, in Shravanam, I'm listening, the knowledge is got, I get the knowledge. Ultimately, it becomes totally my wisdom when in Nididhyasanam. But in our scriptures, we say that, you know what? You don't even need to go to Mananam. You don't even need to do Nididhyasanam. If your listening skills are so sharp and you're so focused and you are completely in tune with the information that is being said, then that's it. So that's how strong that word listen here really means, where Krishna is telling, listen, Arjuna, I'm telling you about me. Who am I? That part of it. So that's the most powerful thing, which in the first shloka he says here. Then in the second shloka, he talks about the difference between jnana and vijnana, which I just used example of electricity. And then the third one, he says that, guess what? Most of us, 99.9% of us, are so distracted that it is very hard for us that knowledge to really sink in. So it is only that rare person who has recognized that everything in this world that I'm going through is nothing but fluff. It really is not the most important thing that I really need to know. When that person has come to that level of maturity and recognition, that person only will be able to grasp this knowledge 100%. So that's why he says, Manushyanam Sahasreshu, among thousands of people, there's only one rare person who can understand this knowledge. And so that is what these shlokas we saw. Maya Asakta Manah Partha, he says, so as a very important attribute, I have to be 100% focused, which is that without Asakta Manah Partha, Yogam Yunjanmadashrayah, I have to be able to see that Lord Krishna everywhere. Only then again it can happen. Only then Asamshayam Samagrama, without any doubt, he'd be able to know me. And then in the second one, where he says, which is where I brought this difference between Jnanam and Vijnanam, is Jnanam is scriptural knowledge. So even Bhagavad Gita, is a vehicle, okay? It's a knowledge. So all these Vedas, Rig Vedas, Yajurveda, all of them are only pointers, again, knowledge. But ultimately, yat jnatva na iha bhuyo anyat. After that, they all take you there. After that, there is nothing else need to be known. Jnatavyam avashishyate. You will know this very clearly. And this is the one where I finally said, among thousands, maybe there is one person who really, really wants to know about this. And among them too, there is, finally there might be one or two who can really, really know me. So very high bar of evolution, goals have been given to us on leading to this part of it. So in summary, what we finally said is, in this section of it, that both Jnanam has been given, but I really have to get to a state where I have to want this. So today, my mind wants things in the world, I have to change the direction of that want to the fact that I finally need only this knowledge. And when I put that thing, then that can automatically happen. So it's as simple as that. I just have to change my want, So in the later shloka, we said, Bahunam Janmanam Yante Ante Jnanavan Mam Prapadyate. So which is only to, even, when I said how lucky we were in the beginning of our session today, we are so lucky that we are in a situation where I am able to keep all the distractions away, as much. And now, when I say this, I want to say that in a way that it's not that we have been given this luck in a platter, we have chosen to take this time to study this. So even for us to get the choice, we have gone through many lives, because if you think about it, maybe 10 years ago, the same time on a Wednesday at 8:30, my choice is probably something different. Today, my choice has been improved, that ultimately this knowledge is what is going to help me, So how grateful we should be that our own mind is cooperating with myself to study this, to know that there is a better life out there, I sometimes I really wonder about it because it's such an important thing. It's nobody has given us this choice, nobody has given us this opportunity. We ourselves have chosen this. So even to say that I'm very lucky and I'm very blessed, that is a creation of my own choice, you know. So in sixth chapter, when it's when we saw this Uddaredatmanatmanam Atmanam Avasadyet Atmaiva Bandhuhu Atmai Ripuratmanaha, I myself am my friend, I myself am my enemy. Such a powerful, nothing can be more powerful than this, as a knowledge which is telling us that ultimately I myself am responsible. So uh, I have been given this human birth, and there are, of course, 5 billion people in the world who also have a human birth, right? But how I tailor that human birth is very important. So only in the human birth can I even think about achieving more in my worldly goals, like from where I am, how am I doing in terms of my body, mind, intellect evolution, and even going beyond to understand that I'm beyond body, mind, which is what these worldly objectives, the spiritual goals are. I can even visualize that keeping this body the same, I can evolve. Like they say that, even if you go to the heavens, right? So many times we think my evolution is by gain, my evolution is based on, how big a house I have, how much of money I have, and everything. That is one aspect of it. But it is possible for us to go beyond that to next think about, okay, how can I get to a stage where my life I can live for a long period of time, I can be always happy, and I can have everything what I want. And that is what in our shastras, it says as the state of heaven. So in heaven, uh, people are supposed to actually have less amount of earthy quality in them, so they live longer, and they're always very bright. And they have, I mean, just like in the cruises, you have food galore, 24 hours you have food, right? And I'm sure you not necessarily that is a practical example, but imagine if you have like 10 or 20 rooms where you have different kind of clothes you can wear, and any enjoyment, everything. So it is said that it is, you may have all that, but you can still not go to the next step of evolution. You have to have this human birth. In this human birth, you have the possibility of evolution. So even somebody who may have gone to that kind of a heaven has to come back to earth, live this human life, and then only evolve to the next level, which is really to go beyond thinking that this is Sunitha, this is the body, mind, intellect, that part of it. So that's the human birth aspect. So we can envision a greater goal, we can introspect, we can think of higher things. And this part of it, understand this difference between lower knowledge and higher knowledge. Lower knowledge is the knowledge where we are spending all our time and energy studying, studying all our subjects to become who we want. And higher knowledge is that knowledge which allows me to think of myself as something beyond what I think of myself today. So, and this in this human birth, we get to also gain not lots of money, but gain lots of merit, which can help me move further in my evolution. And we can also free ourselves from the deep-rooted urges and become liberated. So that's the idea behind this here. Any questions so far before we go to the next set of shlokas, which is 4 to 7, which now gets where Lord Krishna starts to slowly start describing himself.
I have a question. Don't we say that bhakti itself is good enough? With so many people think we have to have bhakti on God, and that itself will make us realize. Don't they say that sometimes?
Yes. So that is the highest form. So bhakti itself we can take it in two different levels, you know. There is one level where I recognize there is that God out there and I've totally surrendered to that God. You know, that is one form of bhakti which you see mostly going on. And even here, sometimes we would classify it as a kind of a blind faith. I really don't know who this God is out there, but I think that God is going to help me in every way possible. And loosely, that is termed as bhakti, but in reality, it is not bhakti, but it is blind faith. The bhakti that you're talking about, which is if I have bhakti, it will take me there, is the person that is applicable to that person who has recognized that ultimately this entire world, what I see, and also what I don't see. Okay. Ultimately, this whole world of what I see and what I don't see is nothing but that Ishvara. Okay. And that total surrender to that complete idea and is completely in with that knowledge, that is the highest form of bhakti. So our everything that we are studying actually leads us to that high level of bhakti. Okay, so it starts with initially that low level where, you know, I do have, it can be simple things, you know, I mean, in the beginning, a child, you know, child has complete faith with on his mother. Now, is the child able to really understand? Not really, but the child has complete faith on his mother. Slowly, he starts to think and everything. And at some point, he says, Mom, I hate you, or whatever. You know, the same mom, who was his total friend, whom he had blind faith, right? After some time, he starts to think, and the mom hasn't changed, but my feelings change. I lost my bhakti. And then later, after 60 years or something, you recognize, you know, your mother is the whole world for you, you know. So anyway, I hope that answers your question on the bhakti. So
thank you.
You're welcome. So now we see Lord Krishna, after having prepared the student, after having given Arjuna a preamble on what he's going to say, he now explains to Arjuna first about his nature. But the way he does is that first he explains his nature by everything that you can actually see or what you can grasp. Okay. So you see shlokas 4 to 7, starting with in shloka number 4, where he starts to explain about how, you know, in this whole world, we have all these mountains, rivers, trees, and everything. And oh, by the way, we also have, if you go a little closer to an individual self, there are some subtle elements which, even though I cannot see, but I can experience. So Krishna starts to explain that in shloka number 4, where, you know, he's saying that, hey, Arjuna, everything that you see in this world ultimately can be broken down, you know, broken down into just 5 elements. And those 5 elements are this bhumihi, apaha, analaha, vayuhu, and, you know, kam. So that is bhumi, which is earth, water, which is apaha, analaha, which is fire, vayuhu, which is air, and kam, which is ether. And then the subtle elements, manaha, buddhi, evacha, which is the mind, the intellect, and this individualism. So egoism here is not the negative one, but it's just the individuality. You know, the minute I don't think I'm this whole cosmos, that I'm the whole thing, I attach to myself. So that egoism, he says, that is the eightfold here. And so this whole 8 thing can be broken down into, so the whole entire cosmos, everything that is there, can ultimately be broken down into these 5 things. And this whole universe, if you look at it it's kind of sometimes strange to understand that is it really all of them? But basically, it is indeed, we also say that the universe is what, 70% or 80% water, right? And the heat which is there is really coming from the fire. And then you have so much amount of space. And then, of course, air is also there. And so you have earth, water, fire, space, and then air. All five of them, they make this whole universe, which we're able to see it. So this one is actually all this lower part of it, the lower Prakriti. And then he will start to explain about there is a higher part of him also. So all this is also nothing but Lord Krishna, but there is this para Prakriti. Apara means lower, para means higher. So lower part of it is this eightfold. And that eightfold, he starts to now explain about how is the Jagat Karanam. So in a sense, everything that I just explained, the eightfold, all that is something which is very inert, which, like I said, whether it's the mind, whether it's the intellect, whether it's all these five elements, these are all very inert elements. But then what is it that is making all these inert elements, perform? That aspect of it, he says, is that para Prakriti. Okay. So, like, for example, if you look at a pot, I'm using very classic examples. In a pot, you have the pot material, which is made into different forms and all that. But then there has to be something which is somebody who's making it into a pot, the pot maker. Okay. That pot maker is we call that as the intelligent cause. Intelligent cause means without that intelligence, we cannot really create a pot. We cannot create many pots. So the Jagat Karanam, the cause of the pot, which is nothing but the mud, is the lower Prakriti, which is again nothing but Lord Krishna in that form, is that Ishvara. And also, Lord Krishna is also the one who is making the pot. So both of them, that is why Jagat Karanam, it is, we call that, in fact, I'll come to that example again. It's Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karanam. Upadana means material cause, and Nimitta means the intelligent cause. So these two things are needed for anything to be created into the world. And in Mundaka Upanishad, I did this again. I'm just bringing it because of the flow of, this thought. So in Mundaka Upanishad, this was explained by how that just like how we have a spider who creates this whole web. So the spider creates the web, and the spider is a creator also. So too, this entire world we see is actually is composed of the two things. One is the material cause, and the other one is the maker itself. This whole thing is what is really this entire world. Any questions? I just want to allow this to sink in a little bit, because our concept of God sometimes, which we have held on to it for a long period of time, from the time we were born to sometimes now, where we still think that there is a God out there who is giving me all this, like we explained, we talked about the train accident and so many different things. We think that there is a God out there who is making this for me and doing something else for somebody else. But ultimately, I myself, being part of this whole cosmos, which is why I brought that the slide in the beginning, that I'm the small part of this big thing. Being part of this whole cosmos, And this entire cosmos is nothing but that Ishvara. That Ishvara itself is of two parts. One part is the part that I'm able to see and experience and everything, which is very inert. But the other part is the one that is making it happen. So the nimitta karanam, which is the intelligent cause, and the upadana karanam, upadana, material cause, both is nothing but that Ishvara. So this is the whole thing that he's explaining in shlokas 4 and then in 5 also. He says, apare yamitis tvanyam. So that all these buildings, everything which is so inert, that is my lower nature. And know what my higher nature, which is Jiva Bhutam Mahabaho Yaya Idam Dharyate Jagat. So he's ultimately saying, if only all these buildings and rivers and everything was there, they would remain separate here and there. Now, what is it that is connecting all of them? What is it that gives life? What is it that really makes everything work? That part of it is this higher nature. So, very important concepts coming out here, because today we live in this world spending all our time on the lower nature part of it. Every activity we are doing, we are only expending in the lower nature part of it, which I said is all these buildings and, all the objects, all our thoughts, all our desires, everything is only the lower nature part of it. But we also have an opportunity to focus on the higher nature of the world. Okay. And that is the para prakriti. So that para prakriti is what we want to really focus upon, which is what he's trying to show here. So I just have this example of this building here, which is Jiva Bhuta Mahabahu Yayedam Dharyate Jagat. So this building cannot stand by itself if it did not have a lot of cement binding the whole thing. Correct? Otherwise, the things that have gone into this building, we have sand, we have lots of wood, we have the mud, we have so many different components. But the one thing that is keeping it together is nothing but the cement, right? So cement is necessary to bring those bricks into a kind of this coherent structure. And that is the one which keeps the building. And so too, the one that keeps our whole cosmos together in a state of, harmony, in a state of unity, and kind of give a sense of purpose to the whole thing, is this para prakriti. Otherwise, we may have imagine if water decides to be by itself and it's running away. The earth, it says, okay, I'm going to be separate. The fire says, I'm going to be separate. I'm just boiling the entire thing into the 5 elements. If they all decide to stay separate, there is no way we can actually have a whole cosmos. So the thing that keeps it binding is this higher principle, which is doing the whole thing. So it is that aspect which for us too, when you look at it, this apara prakriti, para prakriti, you can also think about this higher or lower nature, which is apara as a lower and para as this, as the subject and the object kind of relationship. So, we know that, like, for example, you're sitting on a sofa. The sofa can never really become a subject because it is an inert object. Only, I, who's conscious, can actually sitting on it. So I'm the subject. So there is that aspect of it, which is why, Krishna is really focusing upon how you can see the turn in the flow of knowledge here too. He's saying that, ultimately it's my lower nature which creates a world of objects. In Panchadasi, there's a beautiful very nice flow of thought there, when he explains about ultimately the whole cosmos has been created only because of the individual's desire. The individual's desire to get something out of the world has been created. So that lower nature is the world of objects. The higher nature creates the world of subject. So the subject-object relationship for each one of us also is, all this lower nature is the nature of objects, and then I as a subject, again, I need to bring myself from not this Sunitha, but the Atman who has taken up the role of Sunitha. The Atman is the subject, Sunitha and everything is the objects, And Sunitha, when she connects herself, or the Atman, when it connects itself as Sunitha, the entire world of objects opens up. And that Atman is the subject. Any question, Gita?
No, now I'm a little confused.
Yeah.
The subject is the para prakriti. But Sunitha, you said Sunitha, Atma and Sunitha, there are two different stuff.
So think about it in two levels. One is at an individual level, I have the Atman and Sunitha. Okay. At my individual level, Atman is a higher nature, Sunitha is the lower nature.
So one is Prakriti, the other one is Prakriti.
Correct.
Okay, Apara Prakriti.
Apara Prakriti. And at the individual level also, Atman is the subject and object is the Sunitha. Sunitha okay. And now okay. Look at it from the total view. So I explained at the individual level. Now from the totality also, you will see that which today we are not able to experience it. Okay, when I say we are not able to experience it, what I mean by that is my mind, which is already a very inert entity. Okay. That is engaging in fact, in chapter 3, there was this guna guneshu vartante. There was a beautiful shloka where, ultimately what is happening, Geetam, is it is only my lower nature which is interacting with the entire lower nature of the world. Okay. I forget that I'm also this higher nature. Okay. And this entire world also has that higher nature, which is making this whole world come alive. But my mind is so focused on the lower nature of the world that it is unable to take itself and see the power of God everywhere, and it is actually, practically speaking, if we can think about this, this needs a lot of thought as to why is my mind unable to see the higher nature. The Mahatmas, they see it when they look at the beautiful rainbow, or they see the sun just rising up. They may not necessarily see the sun rising up, but they see the power which is making the sun rise. They see the power which is making everything happen. We can start to slowly.
We understand that there is a power which makes it happen, but we have to feel it. Is that correct? What?
Yes, exactly. In everything, I have to feel that power which is making things happen. It just comes it's not that we don't know about it. It comes, but immediately the lower nature of the world just overpowers our thinking, and we are unable to see that higher power. Simple, when my son gets a prize in the school, at that moment in time, if I can only say that, what, the power made it happen. anybody else could have gotten the prize, but my son got the prize, you know. The power made it happen. The power made the other kid get the prize. The power made this. If I keep on focusing on the power and the power, slowly my mind itself will start to focus on that. So that's what here in the 7th chapter, you see how beautifully, you know, Krishna is now asking us. So far, he taught us how to look at ourselves as individual and, how I'm Atman and all this. Now he's slowly asking us to look at the world in this way. You know,
Okay.
that's the beauty of now this section where he's, you know, the flow of thought is where he's taken it up into looking at the higher and the lower nature. And then this next shloka, which is also very, very beautiful, you know, Etadyodini bhutani sarvani tyupadharaya aham kritsnasya jagata prabhava pralayastata. Here, he's tying the shlokas 4 and 5 together, that ultimately for the world, it is necessary for both of them to work together. Okay. Just having the lower nature by itself wouldn't have been possible, or this one, but they all both work together in creating this whole world and giving us that experience, you know, Etad Yodini Bhutani, saying that you may consider this to be instrumental in the production, Etad Yodini Bhutani Sarvani Tripadharyam, that these are instrumental in the production of this entire cosmos. Whatever you touch, whatever you feel, whatever you see is nothing but all these 8 principles which he explained before. All that they work together and says, you know, Aham Krishnasya Jagata Prabhava Pralayastada. I am the origin and the sustenance of the universe. I not only created this whole universe and brought it, but I also maintain it. And so look at me that way. So that is what he wants us to recognize that. So how do we understand the deeper meaning of the shloka? This example that I gave before, which is about this carpet, you know, ultimately, in order for this whole, for us to look at this carpet, today my mind is very conditioned to see only the effect. You know, I look at the beautiful designs, I look at the shapes, the colors and everything, and I get totally enamored by it. But I need to look at it beyond that and look at what caused the whole thing to happen. And here, the example that I just want to point out is ultimately it was that piece of thread, you know, it's the thread which was colorless and everything, which made this entire carpet come into life, you know. But do I ever focus on that cloth? Do I ever focus on that thread? I don't. I actually look at this carpet, you know. So that is the thing. One more thing to which I wanted to point out here is to recognize, see, we sometimes, and this is in the Western philosophy, you know, you would say, oh, you know, this entire cosmos is nothing but energy. This cosmos is matter, you know. But Krishna is saying that even energy, matter, whatever you say, is actually nothing but ultimately lower nature. My higher nature is beyond even energy. It's beyond time. It's beyond space. Everything, you know. So that is the where he's going with. And we talked a little bit about this also before. You can even think about, you know, where the mud, which makes the pot, is the higher nature, the lower nature is the all the different forms. But ultimately, it is nothing but that higher nature alone, which is Brahman. And if I can see that higher nature, which is Brahman, which is the higher nature, and meditate upon this, so this is a beautiful Mahavakya. Okay, so this next shloka, just like I said, how the cement helps to cement everything. Here, you know, he's explaining this Sutre Mani Gana Eva. Like how, when I see this necklace, my focus goes on only the beads, but I don't recognize that what keeps all these beads together is the string, you know. So the higher nature is the string which is keeping everything intact. Without it, this whole, the lower nature, which is the pearls, will not really be, will be together. So it is a thread which actually gives the stability to the gems. Even if the pearl breaks it, the thread will still remain, right? So that's the example which is very beautifully given here. My focus has to be more on the string, not on the gem, but we pay more attention to the gems than the string, right? So that's the significance of this example, to show that ultimately, it is that just like the string, Brahman actually pervades this entire universe. And when I think a lot and recognize that ultimately it's the lower nature is nothing but all these inert things, the gems and everything, and focus more on that higher nature, my vision also will grow. So, having explained this part of it about the higher nature, the lower nature, and how ultimately we need to, in order for our own evolution, I need to focus on the higher nature. Now, in the next 4 shlokas, 8, 9, 10, actually 5, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which we'll take at least 2 shlokas today. There are about 14 examples that he gives to show that it is he who is present in all creation. It is his example thing, and very beautiful examples. Very quickly we can go through it because it really helps us to focus now our attention on looking at the same world, but looking at it as the essence of each one of them. So I may have chanted, but I just chanted one more time. Rasohamapsu kaunteya, rasohamapsu kaunteya, prabhasmi shashi suryayoho, prabhasmi shashi suryayoho, pranava sarva vedeshu, pranava sarva vedeshu, shabda ke paurusham drishu, shabda ke paurusham drishu. So he's saying that when you look at water, don't just, and again, these are beautiful meditative exercises, if you can just have a glass of water in front of me, and even as I'm drinking the water, my mind is not focusing on anything else but on this glass of water. And even as I'm drinking the water, I'm telling myself, you know what, Ishvara, you are that essence in this water, So rasaha, you're the essence, the taste in water. I know we may say that water doesn't have any taste, but whatever you feel, that is nothing but that Ishvara. Same thing, I'm the light and the moon and the sun. So the sun and the light is in me. That's the way to look at it, Ultimately, I'm the one which is making the sun the sun. Just like we say, sugar, the sweetness of sugar is me. I'm that Ishvara who's the sweetness in sugar. And then, so here he says, I'm the light in the moon and the sun. I'm also the syllable Om in all the Vedas. Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. And I'm the sound in ether. So, all ether here is referring to the air or space. I have to think about this. So we have these 5 elements, and these 5 elements are connected to each of the different sense organs. So when he says sound in ether, again, we have to look at all the 5 elements and the connections. And when he says virility of men, basically what he's saying is the aspect of um, um, the basically our own human being nature. What is the dharma? What is the dharma of a human being? That is what it ultimately comes down to. Meenu, you wanted to say something? No, okay. Yeah. So that is what this shloka number 8. And then shloka number 9, he continues to talk about his glories. Punyo gandav prativyam cha. Punyo gandav prativyam cha. Tejaschasmi vibhavasau. Tejaschasmi vibhavasau. Jivanam sarvabhuteshu. Jivanam sarvabhuteshu. Tapaschasmi tapasvishu. Tapaschasmi tapasvishu. So now he's coming to the earth and he talks about the smell. So smell is connected to earth. So, earth has a fragrance. Punyaha gandha pritivyam cha. Prithvi meaning the earth. And then tejaha, which means the brightness or the brilliance. Cha asmi vibhavasau. And then jivanam. What is it that gives life to all beings? So sometimes, people think, oh, okay, so life is God. So yes, life is God from the higher nature, the essence of what constitutes life, which is all the processes, the digestion, the 5 processes, prana, apana, vyana, that is what constitutes life. So what is the essence of all that? That is also me. That's what he's saying. And tapaha cha asmi tapasvishu. I'm also the tapas, the aspect of the tapas of the Mahatmas, of the great people who do tapas. Now, this is very powerful. Now, you would ask, why is it that he's explaining about tapas is exile, right? So, if you think about it, this is during our course, our Acharya used to say this. Ultimately, what is it that is keeping the sanity of this world? I sometimes really wonder about it. How is it that, even I planned to go to US on May 8th, 19th, I was able to be there. I was able to come here. Everything went so smoothly. How did that happen? So the whole idea is this is at a very, very small scale, but in a world large part of it, if you think about it, there could be with the way our human behavior is, this world could have been a real chaos, everywhere, some killing happening somewhere, something burning another place, some tragedy going somewhere else. How is still there is some goodness in the world? And Aracharya used to say, it is because of the few people who are doing tremendous amount of tapas and have increased the sattvic content in the world. It's very, very few people. And that is the tapas done by the tapas vishu. That is what keeps the world sane and, goodness. So he says, I am that tapas in that tapas vishu. Then I think it's already 9:35 for you. The next 3 shlokas also we'll go through it rather quickly, but this is again just to give you an idea of the very beautiful. He goes into some more, have you ever thought about what is the seed? Who is that seed? Who is, so very, very, so we'll go through this quickly and then we'll go to the next section in next week. The next section, is a very beautiful thing about the types of devotees and all that. Who are the people? What are the different type of people in the world? Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Let me stop the live share.